Hello, gorgeous seekers, and welcome to our moon magic discussion for the new moon in Capricorn happening on January 12th into the 13th. And obviously, this video is coming out much closer to the new moon than I normally have it out. And a series of things were happening in life where I just kept getting pulled away from sitting down and filming this. And often I find that there's a really good reason for that. There's a reason for why maybe I need to take a little more time with a message or when it needs to come out. I have my own little calendar, my little Virgo moon version of reality where I'm on top of it and I'm getting things done in a specific time and order. And then there's the greater scheme that I don't always have my mind wrapped around, right? But I do feel like I had to take the last several days to listen and hear the deeper message going on, because there's a lot of noise right now, right? As we start 2021, there's a lot of loud noise, and there's a lot of aggressive energy, a lot of masculine energy that's not always the most beautiful, making noise. And that can be really distracting, right? It can be hard to hear the deeper wisdom riding through a moment. And so for me, as a human being, I've definitely been having to take extra time to hear more deeply, to hear what this new moon is really about. Because this is kind of the keynote before we even get into the aspects. This is a new moon. New moons, so often, they're about new beginnings. They're about ritual. They're about the ritual of setting intention, being visionary in the darkness. But new moons are also about rest. They're also about listening in. They're also about softening our stance. And I think this Capricorn new moon, on the surface, I think about Capricorn energy, and we're going to talk about these squares. There's a lot of squaring action going on between energy in Aquarius and Taurus while this new moon is happening in Capricorn. And all of these aspects that we're about to talk about have kind of a tension to them. And on the surface, you might think this is about getting more rigid, getting more intractable, getting more locked into something, feeling rigid, feeling stressed, feeling like it's about structure. And this new moon is actually about rest. It's actually about intuitive listening in. It's actually about softening our stance. It's not about looking at the brambles on our path and getting really overwhelmed by that, but just taking enough time to stop and hear something deeper, right? And so that's the really important message of this new moon. So let's talk about the aspects that are going on, what some of those themes bring up with them, and then how to work with that, right? So of course we have the new moon itself. So the sun and the moon are together here at 23 degrees of Capricorn. We're getting close to the end of Capricorn season by the time that we are hitting into this new moon. And this is a new moon that's happening after we've shifted so much of our energy over to Aquarius, right? So it's also a kind of final nod to maybe some of the work you've done with Capricorn as well. So we're continuing that closeout as well, like we were doing with the full moon in Cancer just a couple of weeks ago. So we have that new moon. The things that are happening here, though, all this energy that has moved into Aquarius, which right now we have Jupiter, Saturn, and Mercury all in the early degrees of Aquarius during this moon, are squaring off against the energies in Taurus, which is Uranus and Mars. And yeah, these are big, heavy-hitting energies that often want to shake things up, move everything around, right? All of these are. And so these two camps, the Aquarian energies and the Taurus energies squaring off here, initially you may think, oh my goodness, because squares are about hitting into a point of discomfort that breaks us through into something new or holds us back from change and transformation, right? And this moon is so much about transformation, because I also forgot to mention that this new moon is conjunct Pluto. And that new moon conjunct Pluto is really the heart of the conversation. Whenever we're working with Pluto energy, it can be about control and power. But the deeper message around Pluto is to feel empowerment through transformation, to feel empowerment through our own journey forward as things continue to change. It's to feel not that we want power or control, but that we're comfortable with our transformational, morphing sense of self. And so this new moon really asks us to sit and hear that, and not as a message of dire, fearful darkness, but as a message of calm. Now, the other squares, especially like Mars squaring Saturn, for example, this is going to be like, where is your desire for control and for structure and for like taking charge? It's a kind of an agitated energy that wants to be in control of things you can't be in control of. Where is that desire for structure actually just pinching you, causing you to be in pain, even when it feels like you're just being practical and you're just putting your foot forward and you're just making it through? The Mercury and Jupiter, they're very close together, are squaring against Uranus. And this is about where we also feel we are supposed to transform into something. There's a family legacy or an identity that says, well, I'm supposed to want to transform into this version of myself. I'm supposed to want to shake up my world and be this thing over here. This square is asking us to question that as well. Because as much as it's important to relax and to release and not feel the structure, and also to relax into our transformation, allow ourselves to transform into who we really are becoming, it's just as important to realize sometimes we have cultural expectations about what we're supposed to transform into. And that those transformations have a very specific ending that look a very specific way. You know, it's very much like this time of year is all about all the companies that have to do with like life improvement, whether it's a dating website or dieting or money control. You know, there's a lot of different things that are going to tell you that there's a specific transformative journey where you start in some other state and then you get into the ideal state. And these squares are actually challenging all of that. And this Pluto influence on the new moon is also having us sit with all of that, right? So this is a very processing new moon. And I had a really strong visual for this new moon when I was sitting with the energy. I imagined this landscape, you know, like being out in the desert, like a really beautiful desert. But obviously there are plants with brambles and there are spiky plants. You know, the desert is a really powerful extreme environment where those that live there, it's full of life, have these different ways of morphing, right? And there's brambles, there's things to look out for, but it's also beautiful and expansive. And it's like pre-dawn, so it's very dark still, but there's like that gray kind of light starting to lighten up this huge landscape. And it might be very easy, you're like looking around and maybe there's a whole bunch of like Scottish thistle around you or something like that. And it's going to be very tempting. The noise is going to be, oh my God, I have to look at all these brambles. I have to like pull through all these brambles. I need to get this in order. But this new moon's having us focus on this pre-dawn light. What is that pre-dawn light for you? What does that mean? What is that becoming? What is that sunrise ushering in for you? And it could be really tempting to get into, I'm in the desert, I'm alone, it's midnight, there's been all this is happening, I'm surrounded by things that have the potential to hurt me. It's very easy to get into like a paranoid, rigid, stressed, frazzled mindset as a culmination of all that we have just been through, even just since the beginning of this new year, but also over the last year. It culminates, right? It's not like it's just one stressful week, one bad day. These are subtle culminations that can sometimes end up making us rigid in places we didn't even realize we were rigid. We didn't even realize we had become paranoid, stressed, overwhelmed. I know for me recently, driving is really stressful in a way that it never has been before in my life, where I just feel the agitation everywhere, and I notice that it's a culmination of all the stressors of the year. So there's these places where we've gotten rigid. We've started to look at the brambles. We're starting to look at the paranoia, the suspicion, the worry. And this new moon is calling us back. to the empowerment that comes with this transformational time. And to call us back to a peaceful, nurturing place, a strong place, right? In ourselves that we cultivate, that is not about the anxiety, that is not about the anger, that is not about the agitation, the worry, the fear, right? I'm not negating that those things are there. I just want us to find some grace during this new moon to come back to a deeper wisdom that's very deep in the earth, that's very deep below the surface. For many years, I've talked about digging in the midnight garden. The midnight garden to me is it's the place where we dig up the bones. It's the place where we howl into the night. It's the place where we release and we grieve. It's also a place that we often associate, like culturally, we are told to fear this place. We are told to fear the desert. We are told to fear the brambles. We are told to fear our own transformative power and our own journey through that underworld. And this new moon is inviting us to go to that place and hear it from its true essence, which is one of healing, it's one of forgiveness, it's one of compassion, and it is one of finding compassion for our journey. And in that way, it's one of the most visionary new moon energies you can work with this year, I think, because it's not where you would expect it, right? I think a lot of us would expect a visionary moon to be happening in Aquarius or to be happening, in Leo or somewhere where it's all about like taking action and being bold and being authentic and being yourself. But this Capricorn new moon is bringing us back to an element of us being comfortable in our own natural transformation, not the one that we think we need to have, but the one that is quiet, that is soft. And so often, we think of change in life. We think of our own growth and our shift as something that is a loud storm that jangles and breaks us apart. Sometimes that's true, but often the things that transform us are these subtle, quiet experiences that build over time. This is a great moon to acknowledge yourself, right? Let's pull a card. But it comes back to and the card fell on the floor, so let me grab it. Two of Wands. That is pretty visionary energy. I will admit, that's pretty visionary energy. It comes back to this, though. You're going to look at this new moon, and if you're into astrology at all, or you've just been hearing this message, there's all these squares happening. We're conjunct Pluto, which is often considered a very challenging energy to work with. Capricorn energy can be kind of heavy-hitting. And it's like, oh, so much agitation, so much discord, so much having to push through something that's uncomfortable. And the whole message here is, there is something shifting here, but does it have to just be about the friction? There's something underneath that. I love this Two of Wands. To me, this is a card of sunrise. This is a card of not knowing, right? You don't have all the answers here with Two of Wands. Two of Wands is not about having a set course. Having all the information lined up, having it all put in your calendar. The Two of Wands is a place where you stand in the doorway, right? You initiate yourself into your next chapter, into your next transformation. And you understand that it's a process that will come in waves. It's not something that will make sense from the position of this new moon. But it doesn't mean that there isn't a soft, deep, elemental grace underneath all of these flashpoints going on here in this new moon energy. There's a very strong current right now that is about the loud. And there are things being said there that have import and effect. But I think my job has always been to come back to a quiet voice. Every time, no matter what. Come back to a voice that wants to heal, that wants to find, I think, divine feminine grace and healing and connection and softness. That's my modality. That's what I bring to this conversation. And I think it's important to find ways to anchor into that energy and radiate it in a time when all the noise is everything but that energy. I mean, there are others who are doing beautiful work. It's not just me. It's not like I'm like, oh, I'm the only one. No, I don't feel that way, but I do feel it's important to come back to that place. And I think this moon is a great place to practice that. To practice that energetic quality during a time when we could be looking at the brambles. We can getting rigid, we can be getting harder, we can be getting more set in our ways, we can getting more uncomfortable with our own transformation. This new moon is asking, maybe counterintuitively, to look at why we want to look at the brambles, to look at why we want to harden ourselves so much right now, and to find some softness, to listen in to what is really happening in our hearts and souls. I hope this was helpful. We are going to be doing that activation over on Patreon. So if you would like to continue talking about this new moon, and just hang out with me and have an amazing time with the community over there and see what everybody else is going through with the new moon, it's a great place to connect. I would love to see you over there, so I'll leave that link below. You can also find me on Instagram at Sarah Verba, and on my website. So I will leave all of those links below. I'm of course wearing PinkLune's gorgeous jewelry. I'm covered in citrine today because it's my favorite stone, and the joy and optimism that it brings just makes me happy. You can find her link below as well. I will see you all very soon for the full moon in Leo. Wow. That's going to be an exciting time. Take such impeccable care of yourselves. It's very important at this time. I know that I'm going to go do that right now. And I will see you over on Patreon, I hope. I love you so much. Thank you so much for being here, my beautiful loves, and I will talk to you soon.